over the house?
It's everywhere, all over the walls. He said if I was hungry, I had to eat a dead squirrel.
Now in a daytime exclusive.
You've remained silent for 20 years.
Their shocking stories.
I heard the toilet flush and running water. At that time, I knew he was killing my brother in the bathroom.
John wanted to take a picture of me like I was dead, so then the cops would stop looking for me. I never thought that I was getting out.
We're going to take you inside the underground dungeon where Katie was held captive.
She could scream, but we couldn't hear her because she was 10 foot underground.
I knew that I had to survive, no matter what.
Some of you might remember this little girl. Her name is Katie Beers. 20 years ago, her face was plastered all over the news, and a nationwide manhunt ensued after she vanished into thin air. Her picture appeared on every major newscast. Her story was updated hourly. Days went by. Hope started to fade until police made the shocking discovery. It was a story that sent chills down the spine of a nation. It was just 2 days before her 10th birthday on a cold December day in 1992 when little Katie Beers went missing. She was last seen with John Esposito, who later claimed that Katie vanished from his sight at a Long Island arcade.
The last time I seen her, I gave her the $5 and she was walking toward a machine.
Okay, we're gonna go into the woods.
Katie's godmother told reporters she received a phone call from the little girl screaming that a man had kidnapped her. But what police didn't know was that Katie had never made it to that arcade. Instead, she was being held captive inside the home of the man who had first reported her missing.
She was in apparently in a secret room in his house.
Inside a converted garage, detectives found a bookcase. Behind it was a 200-pound slab of concrete that had to be hoisted by a hook and chain. A wooden trap opened to a shaft that led to a small room, not unlike a coffin, where Esposito kept little Katie hostage for 16 days.
Katie, how are you feeling?
It was Esposito who ended up cracking under pressure. He led police to his secret dungeon and ultimately to Katie. He was convicted of kidnapping and is still serving a sentence of 15 years to life. In the 2 decades since her rescue, Katie has remained silent, working through the trauma and trying to live a normal life. Now, for the very first time ever, Katie is sharing her story exclusively here with us today.
A family friend, John, came by the day of my birthday party at my godmother's house and dropped off a gift for me. He asked my godmother if he could take me to an indoor amusement park to celebrate my birthday. John told me that he wanted to buy me a video game. I told him that I did not have a console to play it. John told me that it was okay that I could play it at his house. I was 9 years old and I had a funny feeling. We walked into his living room and then we went into his bedroom. I was scared at that point. He then proceeded to sexually abuse me for what seemed like only a moment because I blocked it out of my mind. And then he carried me downstairs and I was kicking and screaming. I noticed him removing a shelving unit from the wall. It was the entryway to the dungeon. There was a toilet that was not attached to anything that had a black garbage bag in it. It was dark, cold, and sometimes wet. John told me that he wanted me to record "There is a man with a knife," and oh my God, here he comes. I went into survival mode. I braced my back against the door and kicked it as hard as I could, hoping to be able to get out. I was terrified. I turned 10 the second day. During my captivity, John used to chain me by the neck. He sexually abused and raped me. He hit me a few times. I tried different tactics to get John to let me go. Scream and holler, hoping that somebody would be able to hear me. John brought me down food and drinks. I would only eat and drink the prepackaged foods. I didn't know if he was going to drug them. John was making audio recordings of me. I never wanted to hear them, nor allow anybody else to ever hear them. On the 16th day of my abduction, John came down. I could hear him talking to somebody. I thought that he was bringing friends or somebody else to abuse me. And when they opened up the door, one of the gentlemen said, "I'm a cop, you're safe now." And I didn't believe him because I never thought that I was getting out.
Katie, you've remained silent for 20 years.
Yes.
My question for you is why you've decided to talk. Why now? Why here? Why with me?
It's just, I felt it was the right time in my life, being now 20 years an adult, gone through school, gone through college, a family of my own. I think that the story of recovery is just huge and profound.
You were 9 when you were abducted. You turned 10 your second day.
Yes.
You were there. You had your birthday in this hellhole.
Yes.
How does a 9-year-old, how does a 10-year-old talk to themselves when you're in there? What did you say to yourself?
I was in survival mode. I knew that I had to survive no matter what.
So you said that to yourself.
Yes.
And so you said, I got to stay alive somehow.
Yes, I had the will to survive. I wanted to survive so I could go back and live with my biological mother and to go live back with Linda. I've
Obviously read your book. You talk in here at one point about that he would bring you food. And understand, we're talking here about a 10-year-old child. You had the wherewithal to say, I'm not going to eat anything that isn't prepackaged and sealed up because you didn't want him to drug you. Tell us why.
From the first day, he wanted to take a picture of me laying on the ground looking as if I was dead. And I was fearful that if he had drugged me or come down at some point when I was asleep, he would get the picture that he wanted to, and the cops would stop looking for me.
You thought he would leak that picture out, they would see you, think you were dead, and therefore stop the search.
Yes, he actually told me that he was going to anonymously send the picture to the police so that they would stop looking for me.
Now, when you were down there and you were on this bed, he had you chained much of the time, right?
Yes, he had a chain that he would put around my neck. He realized quickly that my wrist could come out, so he didn't bother with that anymore.
So just put it around your neck.
Yes.
And chained you like to the bed.
Yes.
At that point. You said you wanted to stay alive to get back to your aunt.
Yes.
As sad as it is, you had been molested before.
Yes.
By Sal.
Correct.
Now, who was Sal?
Sal was my godmother, who I called Aunt Linda. That was her husband.
So he molested you. You go to your Aunt Linda. What did she do when you told her?
She told me that
We'll bleep it out. Go ahead.
She told me that I was a liar and to get out of her face.
Okay, and you were how old at the time?
I believe that I was about 7 or 8 years old when I finally told her.
So now you're in captivity, and your best alternative is to try to stay alive to get back to this woman that won't protect you from the predator that you have at home.
Yes.
But yet you still have this will to fight and live.
Yes.
I said this as a cautionary tale. I've written and released a book recently called Life Code. I actually did it with my son, Jay. I've got a chapter in it called Parenting in the Real World. It talks about the fact that as parents, and you're a parent now, we need to prepare our children to live in the real world, and it has real predators in it, and it has really bad and evil people in it. I know you said one of the things you have a hard time doing is disciplining your children because you just want to love them up all the time, which you certainly need to do. You need to love them up all the time. But you do have to let them know that the real world is out there, right?
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in a bit. All right, when we come back, we're going to take you inside the underground dungeon where Katie was held for 16 days. You're going to get an idea of how courageous this then 10-year-old and now mother of 2 truly is. We'll be right back.
Now you are seeing a concrete cover. This will expose the shaft, a drop down of about 7 feet where Katie was pulled and pushed into.
And later,
He tied my hands and legs with a rope. There was a plastic bag that he had laid me over top of. Later I found out that he had laid me on their dead bodies in the car.
it's been 20 years since her infamous kidnapping and rescue. And as you saw, Katie Beers has decided she is finally ready to tell her story. She's telling it for the first time here. Now, the police gave a tour of the underground bunker that Katie's captor held her in. Take a look.
Each and every time he went to this room, and this wheel is taken, and now you can roll that entire wall unit forward. You roll the underlayment foam back. Now you are seeing a concrete cover, and concealed above in this hanger system is another hook. This come-along he kept in the garage. There's a little cutout handle that allows you to reach in and pull up the plywood cover. This will expose the shaft, a drop down of about 7 feet where Katie was pulled and pushed into. The only way you could get through it is on your stomach or on your back. The original dimensions of the room were described, I think, 6 foot by 7 foot by 6 foot high. But Katie didn't have free roam of that room. Within that room was a suspended box. Occasionally, when he let her out of the box, she could get to this part with him present. But very often, of course, she couldn't hold herself and she relieved herself underneath the TV. The only light that she had was the television. That was her contact with the outside world. Had Mr. Esposito not come forth, I don't think we ever would have found Katie.
Well, former FBI profiler and NBC criminal analyst Clint Van Zandt was the FBI agent assigned to Katie's case. Now, Clint was one of the first, if not the first, to enter the bunker after Katie's rescue. This is the first time you've gotten to meet Clint.
That is correct, yes.
How does it feel to put a face with a name?
It's interesting and surreal.
Yeah. You say this is worse than Silence of the Lambs. And we all remember in Silence of the Lambs, at the end, the senator's daughter was in a big kind of well in the middle of a basement. It was just a round hole in the ground. This was so much more.
This was so diabolical. I mean, this was something in this man's demented mind that he had built, labored secretly at nights, building this under his house, and said that it was only going to be for Katie. You were somehow his perfect victim, but you were tough. You blew that idea of a perfect victim.
We've created an animation that shows the sophistication of this bunker in 3D. And maybe you can walk us through this.
Sure.
This starts with a bookcase being pulled out.
Yeah, you walk into this area and you pull the carpet back, you pull the tile back. There's a 200-pound weight that you have to crank up. Then you drop down this shaft 6 feet till you fall into this underground chamber that was completely soundproof to the outside world. There was a quasi-chemical toilet that was down there. There was the bed that Katie was chained to. There was the television in the corner. And my recollection was you had the ability to see outside, to see in the yard, kind of one way, see or hear through closed circuit.
The closed-circuit TV was on the exterior of the room that I spent most of the day in, so I would be able to see the true outside world when he would come down.
You talk about Dr. Phil, a silent scream. Katie could see law enforcement, FBI, police outside. She could scream, but we couldn't hear her because she was 10 foot underground.
Here's a picture of the bunker being raised out by a crane. They're taking it out ultimately. How long had you known this guy?
All my life?
So he had been around a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that when we come back. So what were Esposito's plans for Katie? If he hadn't cracked under pressure, what did he want to do with her long term? More of my exclusive interview with Katie when we come back. It was 20 years ago when Katie Beers was taken, just vanished like that, only to be held for 16 days in an underground bunker by her abductor, John Esposito. He finally cracked under pressure, or she never would have been found. She's here today with an exclusive interview, speaking for the first time in 20 years. Clint Van Zant was the FBI officer that was assigned to the case. He was the first one into the bunker after Katie had been rescued and was a central player in cracking Esposito to give up the information for Katie to be found. Now, Katie, you used a lot of different strategies in talking to him to try to get him to turn you loose. You talked to him about what you wanted to do. You talked to him about your life. Mm-hmm. What did you tell him?
Every day I would ask him a new series of questions. What happens when I got older? When I was 18, I wanted to work, I wanted to have children, I wanted to get married. And his responses were that I wouldn't have to work, he would have enough money for us, that I would have children with him, that I would marry him. And I would tell him that I did not want that.
Everybody in America right now is looking at this and saying, how does a 10-year-old know to talk about these things? What was telling you to do this?
I was hoping that it would make him realize that what he was doing was wrong and that I didn't want to be held captive.
That was a really smart thing to do, to create a future for someone who may not be thinking about a future. It really stretches things out and can keep both of you alive. Was there any criminal history with this guy?
Yeah, he had, and that was part of it. He had attempted years before to take a little boy out of a shopping mall, and he was caught doing it. He had this history of doing something like this, which again kept him in our sights. I mean, the police department did a wonderful job of keeping him as our prime suspect so we wouldn't go away. You know, milk carton kids, you look everywhere. In Katie's case, it had to be this guy, and he had to know where she was.
Just so you know, John Esposito was found guilty of kidnapping in the first degree. He was sentenced to 15 years to life. He is up for parole again in September of this year. So how do you feel about the fact that he could be paroled this coming September?
At this point, I've spoken my piece. I've talked to the parole board during his first parole hearing. But if he gets out, I don't think that he'll be a very productive member of society. Mm-hmm. I can't foresee that.
Katie has written a book called Buried Memories. Katie's co-author wrote to Katie's abductor, John Esposito, and requested an interview. Here are a few excerpts from John Esposito's letter in response to this request. You don't understand how it is in prison every time something happens about my case. I get punished in here. Inmates say bad things to me, and I must endure it. I believe I've been punished enough. The only thing I wish for is to die in freedom. If you write this book, I will be punished again and again. What was your response to that?
As a 10-year-old, he held me captive for 16 days. He knew that he was going to end up going to prison eventually, and it was something that he would have to deal with.
Do you think he should spend his life in prison?
Yes.
Do you think he should die in prison?
Yes, preferably.
And you're okay with that?
Yes.
How has what happened to you affected the way you mother your children?
One of the hardest things for me about mothering my children is disciplining them. But I also understand that I'm not doing it, that we're not doing it to harm him or hurt him, nor do we do it often.
As I wrote in Life Code, our job is to prepare our children for the next level of life. You want your kids to be street smart. You want them to be savvy.
Yes.
You want them to be aware, because you came by it at a very high price, but you were a very street smart, savvy girl with a survival instinct that got you here today. Don't think that you're doing them a favor by indulging, because you're really not, because they'll pay the price later, and you'll really be glad you did. Now, I read your book, so you have to read mine. It's just tit for tat, all right? Look, I want to thank Katie for sharing her story exclusively with us today. Katie's book, Buried Memories, is in stores starting today. And this is well done.
Thank you.
And it is an inspirational story. I mean, it truly is. Thank you for coming here and talking about it. Thank you for doing this today. And I'm going to ask Katie to stick around, because next we're going to talk about another story. 2 years ago, the disappearance of
my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, ha, not fucking likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running shit right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane, making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into gains. I'm the boss, I'm making change. I've been rocking this exchange, popping off and risking things. Gonna make a fucking name, I just wanna be famous. But I don't want that cheap fame, no, I'm not that vain. I just wanna be greatness. 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 Ain't no motherfucker in this world can do it like me. Open up your eyes and insert a little rising. You don't have to love me, you don't have to like me. Got enough love in myself, in my psyche. You should have the same in your brain nightly. If you wanna taste it, you can fucking try me. If you wanna hate, bitch, you know where to find me. And if you go and hate this, you can fucking bite me. Okay, I'm going off every chance I get. I don't really take a loss, well, I'll admit. That's why I'll make it to the top, yeah, I commit. And no, I'm never getting lost, I get after it. Investing in my own stock, cause it's faster than any crypto hits go, let me spend. Everything that you see is something I invent. And it's only a percent. I'm gonna take shots. If I miss all, forget it. I'll take a fat loss just to learn all that's in it. I'm taking snapshots, learning how to fall and get it. I'm getting back up, always stand tall, don't sweat it. I never back up, I don't miss a thing or regret it. I'm always learning, you could call me academic.
led to an unimaginable sequence of events. Murder, kidnapping, and a horrific obsession with leaves and trees. Sound bizarre? Well, when we come back, the little girl who survived it all is here to tell her story, and I want her to know, Katie. We'll be right back.
Sarah was found bound and gagged in the basement of Hoffman's home.
He put me in the basement. I saw leaves everywhere. The leaves were all over the walls.
Well, in the fall of 2010, what started out as the disappearance of 4 people quickly turned to a horrific story of murder, abduction, and a killer with a bizarre obsession with leaves and trees.
We continue to follow breaking news this afternoon.
4 people, including Tina Herman, her children Cody and Sarah, and a family friend Stephanie Sprang, mysteriously disappeared.
It did look like there was some sort of violence that occurred.
The blood evidence in the house revealed 3 separate violent attacks and showed the victims were dragged to the bathroom.
One man is in custody today accused of kidnapping Sarah Maynard.
We have located and rescued 13-year-old Sarah Maynard.
Sarah was found bound and gagged in the basement of Hoffman's home.
A SWAT team rescued the girl and arrested Hoffman. In the end, Hoffman does cooperate.
Well, deep in the woods behind me is where deputies found the 3 bodies. They were in trash bags placed inside a hollow tree. The discovery was so gruesome, even the sheriff was shocked.
My entire law enforcement career, I have never experienced something like this.
Well, today, in a daytime exclusive, Sarah, now 15, is here to tell her story of survival and how she made it out of this horrifying ordeal alive.
My brother and I got home from school that day and noticed that things were weird. When I started to take my shoes off, I looked down and saw blood. When I started to go down the hallway, there was a guy who came out real fast. I got to the phone and dialed 911, but I didn't hit talk because I thought that if I called 911 that he'd kill me. He got out his knife and cut me on my finger. There was already blood on the knife that he had in his hand. I saw blood everywhere. There was blood on the walls, all over the floor. That is the moment when I began to think he killed my mom. He tied my hands and legs with a rope and then put me in the kitchen. At that time, I knew he was killing my brother in the bathroom because I heard the toilet flush and then I heard running water. He told me to sit up so he could blindfold me and gag me. He had put me in the back seat of my mom's friend's Jeep. There was a plastic bag that he had laid me over top of. Later, I found out that he had laid me on their dead bodies in the car. He then drove me to another house. He unblindfolded me and then he put me in the basement. I saw leaves everywhere. The leaves were all over the walls. He had told me he wanted to put leaves to make my bed comfortable. He gave me a bowl of cereal with rotten milk, and then he said if I was hungry, I had to eat a dead squirrel. I didn't eat anything for 4 days. Didn't sleep. I stayed awake worrying about where my family was.
I found out that my children were missing when I received a phone call that Tina didn't show up for work. Tina's boss went to her house and discovered that there was blood inside the house. I started fearing for the worst. I needed answers.
The day I was rescued, I clearly remember. I was down in the basement and I heard these guys come down the steps and they said, "We're not down here to hurt you." And then they picked me up and put me in the ambulance.
On Sunday, November the 14th, I received a phone call from a detective. The detective informed me that he had found my daughter alive. But when I asked the detective where my son was, he couldn't give me a direct answer.
With one child safely recovered, Sarah's father prayed for the same fate for his son. But sadly, Larry's worst nightmare had come true.
The day after Sarah was found, I went to Tina's home. While walking into the bathroom, and inside the bathtub, there was a ring about 6 inches off the base of the bathtub. It was a blood ring, and I just broke down into tears. 2 days after being caught, Matthew confessed to killing all 3 of them. The deal was they would take the death penalty off the table in cooperation with him giving the location of their bodies.
Matthew told the police that he had put the bodies in a tree.
Matthew Hoffman was infatuated with trees and leaves. Matthew requested that the tree where he had placed all their bodies at not be cut down. The prosecutor agreed to that, and the minute that the bodies were extracted, they cut the tree down. I learned later on from an autopsy that Cody was stabbed 10 times. He was decapitated from earlobe to earlobe.
I can't think about how they died. It is too much because that's not a way a human being should die.
Well, despite Sarah's courage and strength and ability to articulate the details of her kidnapping, I felt it was important that she did not see these graphic images ever again. So I've had Sarah and her father, Larry, sequestered backstage. They've not seen any of this. They're going to join us now. Here we go. Sarah, good to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Sit.
Thank you.
It's been 2 years. Tell me how you're doing with all of this, how you're doing mentally and emotionally in adjusting to not only what you went through personally, but to the loss of your family members here.
I'm doing good. I just try not to think about it every day, even though it's hard to move on, like not having a mom or a brother, but you still gotta be strong and just live past through it.
And how are you doing with all of this? I mean, it's just not natural for parents to bury their children.
It's the greatest loss of all. I mean, you know, as far as, your heart being completely broke, it's like the worst that you could ever imagine.
How did this come about? Why do you think you were targeted here? Why your family?
There were some officers that said that Matthew might have been infatuated with my daughter. He might have seen her somewhere or something, just like a predator.
Did he talk to you? Why do you think he kept you alive?
I think I just listened to everything he told me to do and just tried to stay positive, thinking that I would live through it, and just thinking about what had happened to them and just staying strong.
He took you out of the house and took you to his house, right? And there were all of these leaves all over the house. Why? Why did he say they were in there?
No reason.
Have you cried about this? Has this been painful to you emotionally? What's been your reaction to it?
It's been painful inside, but I haven't really showed any emotion. I don't really cry that much.
Do you think that it's bad to cry, or that it's a weakness, or that it's somehow wrong to cry?
No, I don't think it's wrong to cry.
But you seem to fight it pretty hard. Have you been seeing anyone about this at all? Have you been in gotten any kind of help with this, with your feelings or anything?
Yeah, I used to go to counseling.
Was that helpful?
It was.
How do you think she's doing with all this?
I think she pretty much stays busy with academics and sports, and that kind of occupies her mind.
We're going to take a break here, and up next we're going to find out why Sarah's dad sleeps with a loaded pistol every night. And I'm going to ask him where he does it. We'll be right back. Two years ago, Sarah walked into her home and found herself in the middle of an unimaginable nightmare. Her mother and brother and a family friend were brutally murdered. Sarah was held captive on a bed of leaves by a killer who had a bizarre obsession for trees.
When I had first brought Sarah home, she was very fearful that somebody was going to hurt her. She thought there was more than just Matthew involved, and she was scared that they were going to come after her and kill her. I enrolled Sarah in counseling the day after I'd brought her home.
I didn't go back to school for 4 months. The kids were mean. They would tease me about being raped in leaves.
Sarah still has nightmares, not as frequent, but every now and then she'll have a nightmare where I'll have to physically go and wake her up.
I have a dog named Elsa. She used to be on the K9 team that was searching for my mom and my brother. My dog always sleeps with me every night, and if anybody were to come in our house, she'd attack them.
I don't sleep in my bedroom in my bed anymore. I sleep in my recliner with a loaded gun. And the reason why I do that is so I can protect my family. I have this chair positioned where I can see both doors in my house. When I found out how my son was murdered, it shook me to the core of who I am.
The only times I really cried is when they first died and their funeral. I try to let it not get to me. I get detached from it.
I tell Sarah that there's one of two ways that she can handle this. She can let this destroy her life and ruin her, and which is exactly what Matthew Hoffman wants. Or she can use it as motivation and live life the way she wants to live it.
You sleep with a gun every night.
That's correct. I feel that I can best protect my family from my living room in my recliner with my loaded gun.
Mm-hmm. Do you sleep?
Not very much, a couple hours.
Kind of in and out?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you sleep at night?
I have nightmares, but I sleep.
What do you see in your nightmares?
People chasing me, killing me, burning me.
How long has it been since you've seen anyone professionally? Therapist, counselor?
Probably about 6 months, maybe.
About
6 to 8 months, yeah.
Yeah. The two of you have written about this, and this can be very helpful to do this in a sense. The book is The Girl in the Leaves, and it's by Sarah and Larry. And I've studied this book just as I did your book, Katie. But there comes a time where you need to start looking at this in a different way, and you need to move in to a grief process in a very focused way for both of you. And you can provide some real leadership for your daughter here. The worst thing in the world you can do is to focus on the details of this. And those memories, it's part of the God's grace. Those memories will decay in your mind. And Sarah, let me introduce you to Katie Beers right here. Say hi. Hi. She's been through trauma like you have, but she's 18 years further down the road than you are. And Katie, it does lift. It does get better, right?
It does. It will definitely get better. You need a support system. You need somebody to talk to, a therapist, a counselor. Just going over how you're feeling every day, every week, what's triggering your emotions and different things like that. But it is very helpful to talk about everything.
I want to introduce you to someone else. Dr. Lawless is the chairman of the Dr. Phil Advisory Board, and he's the director of the PNP Center in Dallas, which is a diagnostic and treatment center, and I believe is the foremost authority in the United States, if not the world, on post-traumatic stress disorder, people that have reactions after going through really severe trauma. I just want you to take care of you, It's not selfish to take care of you, and it's not weak to feel. I mean, you gotta do that. Sarah does have hopes. She does have dreams for the future. Through all of this, she's kept her eye on the ball. I want to talk about what her dreams are. I want to talk about what her hopes are. Because you got to be moving towards something. That's the thing she's doing that's really right. We'll talk about that when we come back.
This is a baseball that we gave out to everybody that attended Cody and Tina's funeral. Dr. Phil, I wanted you to have this baseball. Cody would love for you to have that.
Thank you so much. I will put that in a place of honor in my office. Okay, thank you very much for that. Sarah says that in the future, she's a ball player too. She says she wants to go to the University of Florida. She wants to play softball, right? Well, we have a special guest with us today who was inspired by Sarah's bravery and wanted to meet her. So I would like for you to welcome Danita Nisus, Executive Director of the University of Florida Alumni Association. Hi. How are you? Let's see right here. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, first things first. You got to look like a gator if you want to be a gator. So we have this for you. Put that on.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah. We reached out to our gator clubs in Ohio, and they responded in true gator fashion. The gator clubs in Ohio are going to raise scholarship support for you to attend the University of Florida. They are also going to provide mentoring to you. We have a number of recent Gator grads that are living in Ohio that can help you with preparing for college. And then we also want to invite you to campus in the fall to be a Gator for a day, attend a football game, visit the College of Medicine. We understand you'd like to be a pediatrician, and we want to have you meet other students. And then on behalf of the entire Gator Nation, we are making you an honorary Gator because we are all inspired by your courage and your bravery, and we want to do everything we can to help this dream of yours come true, and that is to be a Florida Gator.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you,
is
Dr.
so
Phil.
wonderful.
Thank you very much.
All right. Sarah Larry and best-selling author Robert Scott have written a book called Girl in the Leaves. It's available in stores now, and everybody in the audience is going to get a copy. All right?
Both of you.
All right, the one thing I want all of these amazing survivors to hear when we come back. Listen, I just want to talk to every parent out there You have to believe your children. When your children come to you and say, listen, something's not right in my life, somebody's bothering me, somebody is doing something that is making me feel funny, you have to believe them. It's what I call a false positive system. I would rather go investigate 1,000 situations where nothing is wrong than fail to investigate a single one where something is wrong. But you cannot do what happened in your situation, Katie. Get out of my face, I don't believe you. A special thanks to former FBI profiler Clint Van Zandt. Really, thank you so much. You made a difference here. Be sure to pick up copies of both of these books, Katie Beers' Buried Memories and Sarah and Larry Maynard's